Thanks, Neil. I'm super excited for this new segment. It's going to be such a great opportunity for listeners and fans of Agent Rise and fans of Neil Mathweg to really ask some questions that have been burning in their minds for a while. So, what a great new outlet we have here. Let's get right into it. So, the first question that we have for you is really about you've been in the business for a long time. You've seen a ton of changes. I know you went through the crash in 2008, which was like Armageddon. I can only imagine. So like, what's the difference between then and now? Like, what changes have you seen? And maybe like, is it easier for agents now, or is it harder, or a combination of both? What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, it's definitely a combination of both, because it's easier in some areas and much harder in other areas. And let me get to where I think it's harder. And because I think that's where most of us are at right now, is this is a must move market. And for many years of my career, it was a want to move market. I mean, I go back to the early 2000s where interest rates were great and people were wanting to move. We did a lot of move up buyers. We had people that had houses that they wanted a bigger house and they wanted to move into move up. And in today's market, that's just not the case, with interest rates being where they're at compared to what most have. If they're sitting with a 3% interest rate, they're not excited to go out and get a 7, 8, or a 9, right? So they're not moving unless they have to, and it's a must move market. That's where it's gotten harder. But where it has gotten easier is our ease of doing transactions. Back in the day, we didn't have DocuSign, and I had to get everything signed. I had to go there and drive there. We drove everywhere, and that was much harder. Also, for advertising sake, I didn't have social media to advertise on. Everywhere I advertised, I had to pay to be there. And so that's where it got harder. And in today's market, that's where it's much easier, right? We can just use social media. We can, there's so many different ways we can reach people for free in this market. And so that's what I like about, that's where it's gotten easier.
I didn't even think of marketing. That must have been very different, because I didn't, all I knew is social media. I started out with Facebook ads very early on in my real estate career. Like, what's the weirdest place that you ever like put an ad or ever marketed?
Oh yeah. Well, I think back where the marketing really happened and where it really got going for us was print advertising. So we had all of these different home magazines, different, the real estate book and all of these different magazines, and we would run these full ads in it. And there was agents that weren't even getting results with ads back in the day. So then we started doing call capture systems. So we had the 1-800 number pre-recorded information line. So you'd see this house and it would make you want to learn more. It was click worthy, right? Nice. It had a photo, it had a little bit of a description, but it did have the price. It did have all the details. So people wanted to call and get the details. So they'd call and listen to the 1-800 number. And then we had caller ID on that. And we knew of all the calls that came in. And then if they wanted more information, they had to press 0 on the call, and then that would go right to our cell phone. So that was a state-of-the-art program that we were running back in the early 2000s. Yeah. It truly was. And we would generate about 100 leads a month from it. It was amazing.
I am old enough to remember Movie Phone. If you remember Movie Phone, where you dial the number, you get the movie times, and then yeah.
Oh, right. Yes. Hold on. It's about to come up, right? Yeah. Our movie that we want to watch.
Phone, yep. Yeah. But yeah, so that's it's such a different time. The advertising was different. You had to drive around and get wet signatures. I mean, there wasn't such a thing as e-signing. So wet signatures everywhere. I can't even imagine. I don't know if I could do it without DocuSign. I really don't, because
right.
It's like driving around and I've had people from all over, and even like mailing. Like, so did transactions take longer back then when you first started?
It was it wasn't that it took longer. It was that it just it was harder to get things done quickly. You always had to make sure you allowed 2 days. Like binding acceptance was usually 2 or 3 days, because you had to allow enough time to get the signatures. I also got really techie back in the day and went and bought 3 fax machines. And I give my clients a fax machine if they lived out in the country where it was too far away for me to buzz over and get a signature. So during our transaction, I gave them, and and of course it had my brand on it.
Yeah.
We had them stickered and everything, and Neil Mathweg on them. But we gave fax machines to our clients, and that was a way, because otherwise I was spending. I mean, I was in the car all day long. I was driving 40, 50, 60,000 miles a year, because I was just, every little thing, if we needed an amendment signed or needed anything done, I had to get in the car and go do it, or they had to come to my office, which it was always, I wanted to provide the best service, so I always went to them. But I mean, it was, we'd leave stuff at the front counter for somebody to stop in and
Mhm.
sign and do things like that. But it was always just kind of waiting around, and then you'd have to wait for the stuff to come in on a fax machine too. There was no notification that there was a fax in, so you'd run to the office and see if their fax came in. Nope, didn't come in yet. So you'd go back out, and you're always looking for the fax, right? So I mean, all of this was everything just took much more time, and it was harder, right? It was harder to work according to that. So
Grandpa Neil. Grandpa Neil's stories
that's
about back
right.
when we had fax machines back in my day.
Back in the day. Back in
No,
the
that's
day.
so we you were innovative with the tools that were available at the time. I
Right.
never would have thought of that. I mean, maybe I would have, who knows? But to have to buy a few different fax machines way cheaper than maintenance on your car, driving 70,000 miles, way more efficient than trying to connect and wait for somebody to come into the office. That's innovation right there. So that's something that hasn't changed. I know this is Ask Neil, but I'm just gonna throw that in there. Like, you still, I think,
Right.
to have that competitive advantage, like, innovation still needs to be like front and center on things. And that's just a great example of, like, you kind of made like a rudimentary DocuSign with it, by giving your clients a fax machine to use. That's just so cool. I just love that story. That's pretty neat. I didn't know that. I didn't know you did that. I learned something here about you today. So that's pretty cool. But I think that the
That's
innovation is
that's
is certainly key there for sure.
That's the classic. So one other thing made it much more difficult today is the number of transactions versus the number of agents in the industry. And I think we're starting to see that number come down, the number of agents. There's agents leaving the business. And I think that the agents that are all in and are going to really, really, focus on their business, they're going to be just fine. But it is one of those things that does make it more difficult. And I think back to the days where we had, there was so few agents in our market and there was so many transactions. They're just, the ratio was completely different than where it is today.
Yeah, I hear that. Including me, there's two agents that live in my cul-de-sac, and there's only three houses. There's only three houses in my cul-de-sac. So two out of three agents in
Right.
my
Yeah.
cul-de-sac out of the homes there. So yeah, it's definitely.
And I see that changing too. I see that changing right now in these times. And I also see the must move and the want to move changing as
Mhm.
well. There's going to be people that are going to want to move. They're going to release that, let go of that interest rate. And there's going to be a want to move market. I remember during the recession where we were sitting there with all that inventory. I never, ever in a million years thought it would churn. And when it churned quickly. And there was all of a sudden abundance of opportunities, both buyers and sellers, and deals were easy to put together. So I believe that it'll churn. I just think where we're sitting right now, it's hard. It's about as hard as it can be.
I'm gonna ask you a provocative question. Maybe it's not that provocative, but it's a question. I think that it seems to always come up because the fear mongering media loves to talk about it. The crash. You were an agent during the crash. I know if you've been a fan of the show for any length of time, you know Neil's story, lost some money in the crash and all that. The question I have for you now is, what's the difference between now and back then, like leading up to the crash, as opposed to where we are now? Because people still talk about the crash is coming, the crash is coming. It's another bubble. And it's just, for me,
Yeah.
if you might share this opinion, I guess that's why I'm asking the question. It just seems like a lot of fear for clicks and fear mongering for ratings and video watches. Like, what's your thought? Like, where are we in the market now as opposed to where we were back then, and like, what's the difference?
Yeah, I think right now we're in a reverse. Like it is back then we had way too much inventory and not enough buyers. Now we've got too much inventory, not enough inventory and too many buyers. Now the buyers are starting to pull back, and in some markets the buyers have really pulled back and the inventory has started to climb. I think that a tight market with no inventory is worse than a market with a lot of inventory and like the recession inventory. Like when we were in the recession, we had 48 months of condo inventory, 24 to 30 months of residential inventory. Like there was just so much inventory and nobody buying it that it was horrible. It was really, really hard. You didn't know if you were ever going to sell the listing. You didn't know if your buyer was ever going to buy a house. You would go show a buyer 100 houses before they would pick one out because they had so many options, right? So it was a lot of work. It was a grind, and there was fewer transactions. We're in that same exact boat today, but just in the reverse of it, right? We don't have enough inventory. We've got too many buyers, and we have a hard time getting people into properties. So, but what I've always learned, and I've seen both of these markets, is that it doesn't last forever, and the market will change. The market will shift, and I'm really surprised that it hasn't yet. I've been thinking that it was going to shift by now, and I'm surprised that it has. And you're starting to see it happen in other markets, and so I think over time we're going to start to see more inventory come. And I'm surprised that it's not here already. And I'm seeing some markets soften, but there's some markets. I mean, back in Madison, Wisconsin, I mean, we got no inventory, and it's tight as can be. Down here in Florida, where I live now, it's the opposite. We've got inventory down here. We got 6, 7, 8 months of inventory down here.
Yeah, I'm in Atlanta, and it's the same here as Madison, where there's just not enough homes for sale. But then there's pockets of like if you get a little out of the city and get a little more rural, it's like night and day compared to the market closer to the city. So I totally get it. Well, this is awesome. I think it was a good first Ask Coach Neil segment.
Let's go.
This is great. I'm looking forward to making this a regular part of the show. And man, the people's coach, as always. Thanks, Neil.
Let's go. I love it. Let us know what you think of this segment in the comments below. If you've got a question for Ask Coach Neil, put that in the comments as well, and we'll make sure we get that on the next episode.